Karen's laugh was a hyena's cackle, sharp enough to make the sparrows scatter from the oak tree. She stood on my land, claiming it as her empire, her chunky gold bracelets glinting like war trophies under the fading sun. 2 years ago, I left for a teaching job in Thailand, entrusting my 5-acre plot in rural Ohio to nobody but time. It was my sanctuary, a patch of earth where my grandfather once grew corn and my mother planted wildflowers. I'd planned to return and build a cabin, a quiet life. But Karen, the HOA tyrant from the neighboring subdivision, had other ideas. She'd rented out my land to a shady contractor for a quick buck, claiming I'd given implied consent by being gone. Now, she faced me, unapologetic, as the truth unraveled in a storm of legal papers and righteous fury. I'd been back in town for 3 days when I got the call from my old friend, Amos, a farmer with hands like leather and a heart too kind for his own good. "Elliot, your land, it's a mess. Some company's been digging it up, saying they leased it from a woman named Karen." My stomach dropped. I hadn't signed anything, hadn't spoken to anyone. I drove out that afternoon, the familiar dirt road now scarred with tire tracks and churned earth. A bulldozer squatted like a beast, its blade biting into my soil. And there was Karen, in a garish floral blouse, barking orders at a wiry contractor who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Who the hell are you?" Karen snapped when I stepped out of my truck, my boots sinking into the mud of what used to be my meadow. Her voice was all sharp edges, her eyes narrowing as if I were the trespasser. She was a mountain of a woman, her presence as overbearing as her perfume, which hit me like a chemical assault. "This is my land," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the heat rising in my chest. "You've got no right to be here." Karen snorted, folding her arms. "Oh, honey, you've been gone for years. I figured you abandoned it. Implied consent, you know. I'm just making use of what you clearly didn't want." Her smirk was a challenge, daring me to fight. The contractor shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. Amos stood behind me, his jaw tight, and I could feel his quiet anger matching mine. "Implied consent," I echoed, incredulous. "You forged documents, Karen. You rented out property that isn't yours." I'd already called my lawyer, Sarah, a sharp young woman from town who'd grown up dodging HOA fines for her lemonade stand. She was on her way, armed with title deeds and a cease and desist order. But Karen didn't know that yet. She thought she'd won. "You can't prove a thing," she said, waving a manicured hand. "This land's been sitting empty, an eyesore. I did the community a favor. You should thank me." Her voice dripped with condescension, as if I were a child who'd lost his toy. The contractor muttered something about permits and slunk toward his truck, clearly sensing the storm brewing. Amos stepped forward, his voice low but firm. "Karen, you've been fleecing folks for years with your HOA nonsense. This ain't your sandbox." His words carried the weight of a man who'd seen her bully neighbors into submission, fining them for untrimmed hedges, threatening liens over kids' basketball hoops. Karen's reign was a local legend, and not the good kind. She laughed again, that grating cackle. "Oh, Amos, you're adorable. Stick to your cows. This is business." She turned to me, her eyes glinting with malice. "You're not getting this land back without a fight, Elliot. I've got connections." I wanted to scream, to tear into her for defiling my family's legacy. But I held back, knowing Sarah was minutes away. The air was thick with tension, the kind that makes your skin prickle. The bulldozer's engine idled in the background, a low growl underscoring the standoff. A small crowd had gathered, 2 neighbors from the subdivision, drawn by the commotion, whispering behind a fence. They didn't dare approach Karen. Nobody did. Sarah arrived in her beat-up sedan, her briefcase swinging like a weapon. She was all business, her ponytail bouncing as she marched toward us. "Elliot, I've got everything," she called, holding up a folder thick with documents. She turned to Karen, her voice calm but razor-sharp. "Ms. Thompson, you've committed fraud. You forged a lease agreement and pocketed the profits. We're filing charges." Karen's face twitched, but she didn't back down. "You're bluffing," she spat. "I run this HOA. I know the law better than some small-town lawyer." Sarah didn't flinch. She opened her folder, pulling out the title deed with my name in bold. "This is Elliot's property, registered in 1998. You had no authority to lease it. The contractors already admitted you approached him with a fake contract." He's willing to testify. The contractor, now leaning against his truck, nodded nervously. Karen's smirk faltered, her eyes darting between us. For the first time, she looked small, her bravado crumbling like the dirt under her feet. "You can't do this," she stammered. "I'm a pillar of this community." "A pillar?" Amos scoffed. "You're a parasite, Karen. You've been extorting folks for years, and now you've gone too far." The neighbors by the fence murmured, their whispers growing bolder. One of them, an older woman with a cane, stepped forward. "She fined me $500 for painting my mailbox blue," she said, her voice trembling with anger. "Said it wasn't HOA approved. I had to skip my meds to pay it." Karen's face reddened, but she doubled down. "You people are ungrateful. I keep this place civilized." Her voice cracked, betraying her panic. She wasn't used to being challenged, let alone exposed. Sarah handed me a document to signal lawsuit for fraud and damages. I scrawled my name, my hand shaking with a mix of rage and relief. "You're done, Karen," I said. "This land is mine, and you'll pay for every cent you stole." The lawsuit hit her like a freight train. Over the next month, the case unraveled her empire. The contractor turned over emails proving Karen had forged my signature. The HOA board, tired of her tyranny, voted her out. Neighbors came forward with stories of her overreach fines, threats, even a case where she'd tried to seize a widow's home over unpaid dues. The court awarded me damages, enough to restore my land, and then some. Karen's connections vanished, leaving her to face the consequences alone. I stood on my land again. Months later, the bulldozer gone, the earth healing under new grass. Amos helped me plant wildflowers, just like my mother had. The neighbors, free from Karen's shadow, brought over pie and stories, their laughter filling the air where her cackle once echoed. Karen had moved away, her house sold to cover legal fees. Rumor had it she was living in a cramped apartment, still muttering about implied consent. The land was mine again, but more than that, it was our community reclaimed from a woman who thought she could own everything. Justice wasn't just the lawsuit, it was the quiet moments, the shared stories, the seeds taking root. Karen's greed had sown her downfall, and in its place, something better grew. The end.